A broke waitress smiled at the mafia air, and from that moment he could no longer let her go. But what if the one person who finally sees your heart is also the person most capable of destroying your life? On a rain-soaked night in Chicago, Nora Hayes stood alone inside a closing cafe, counting tips that barely covered rent. Across the street, a black SUV waited with its engine running. Then 3 men stepped through the back door and told her the truth Adrian Moretti had hidden. Her smile had not only made him fall for her, it had made her his weakness. This is not just a story about forbidden love. It is about power, survival, betrayal, and whether a dangerous man can truly earn redemption. Stay until the end. Like the video and comment where you are watching from. 6 months before 3 strangers walked into common ground and called her Adrian Moretti's weakness. Nora Hayes was still pouring burnt coffee beneath a ceiling fan that clicked like a tired clock. At 5:40 in the morning, Harbor Light Diner belonged to the people who had nowhere else to be. The sky beyond the windows was the color of old steel. Street lamps trembled on wet pavement beside the Calumet River. Behind the kitchen doors, grease snapped in a skillet, and Maggie Doyle cursed at an oven that had survived 3 mayors and 2 building inspectors. Nora balanced a coffee pot in one hand and 3 plates along her arm. 2 eggs over easy rye toast, no butter, she said, sliding breakfast in front of Frank Bell. Hot sauce on the side. Frank looked at the empty seat across from him. You always remember? For 37 years, Frank had eaten breakfast beside his wife, June. After she died, he kept ordering 2 coffees. Maggie had wanted to stop him. Nora kept bringing both. That morning, she placed a second mug across from him without a word. At the counter, Evelyn Whitman searched through a purse large enough to hold emergency supplies for a small war. Where did I put those pills? Blue bottle, Nora said. Side pocket under the coupons. Evelyn found it and looked impressed. You remember my purse better than I do. Nora set down a plate of toast. I brought you something to take them with. I did not order toast. You also did not order the dizziness you had yesterday. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. You are bossy for someone wearing shoes held together with glue. Nora looked at her worn black shoes. The glue is industrial strength. Harbor Light had once been bright. Old photographs near the register showed clean turquoise booths, polished chrome, and waitresses in white aprons beneath a glowing red sign. Now the sign buzzed more than it shone. The vinyl seats had split. The tile dipped near the restrooms. When wind came off the river, it found every gap in the windows. Still, the diner was warm. It smelled of coffee onions, cinnamon, and wet winter coats. It held people the way an old hand held another hand, without elegance but with memory. Nora knew which customers wanted conversation and which needed silence. She knew Daniel Park read the business section last because bad news spoiled his appetite. She knew Maggie hid unpaid utility notices beneath the register and counted receipts after closing with her lips pressed tight. Nora noticed things. It was the closest thing she had to a talent. At 6:15, Maggie pushed through the kitchen doors carrying a cream-colored envelope and a look that made Nora stop moving. Maggie was 59, broad-shouldered, quick-tempered, and nearly impossible to frighten. Nora. Back office. The office barely held a desk, a filing cabinet, and 2 people. Maggie shut the door. The block sold. Nora stared at her. What block? This block. Harbor Light Park. Books the hardware store, the laundromat, the apartments upstairs. Everything from here to the river. Who bought it? Moretti Urban Group. Everyone in Chicago knew the name. Moretti built places with rooftop gardens, glass walls, private gyms, and rents designed to keep ordinary people outside. Maybe they are keeping the businesses. Maggie laughed once. People like that do not buy old buildings because they admire the mold. Did they say what they want? They are sending the owner this morning. Adrian Moretti is coming here. So the letter says. For the next hour, everyone worked with the desperate speed of people preparing for judgment. Nora scrubbed the counter. Maggie baked an apple pie. Daniel Park crossed from his bookstore and helped straighten a crooked frame near the entrance. "They bought my building, too," he said. Nora stopped polishing the sugar dispensers. "What will you do?" Daniel looked through the window toward the faded green awning of Park Books. "My family opened that shop in 1984. My wife kept the accounts. My son learned to read behind the register." He straightened a sugar packet. "I suppose I will wait for polite people to tell me what those years are worth." Frank pointed toward the corner booth. "My June proposed to me right there. Put the ring in my meatloaf." Evelyn turned from the counter. "You nearly swallowed it. I was hungry." A few customers laughed, but the sound faded. Nora looked around the diner. The long counter had held birthday cakes overdue, bills, first dates, and final conversations. The place did not merely contain furniture, it contained proof that people had existed together. "Buildings do not remember people," Nora said. "Places do." Maggie carried the pie toward the display case. "Places only survive when somebody can pay the taxes." At 8:12, a black sedan stopped outside. A compact man in a dark suit stepped out first. His eyes moved across the window's roofline and alley entrance. Then he opened the rear door. Adrian Moretti unfolded from the car. He was taller than Nora expected, with dark hair touched by silver at the temples and the stillness of someone who never wasted movement. His charcoal suit fit without a wrinkle. A woman emerged from the other side wearing a cream coat and carrying a leather folder. "Celeste Moretti," Maggie whispered. "His sister, company lawyer." The door opened. Conversation fell away. Adrian entered first. His gaze traveled across the diner, noting the front windows. Kitchen doors, rear hallway, and emergency exit. Nora noticed the pale scar under his jaw. Maggie welcomed him and offered fresh coffee and pie. "Coffee first," Adrian said. Nora took the pot. As she crossed the room, Evelyn rose for her coat. The strap of her purse caught beneath the stool, spilling prescription bottles, coins, tissues, and photographs across the floor. Nora set down the pot, but Adrian reached Evelyn first. He lowered himself onto one knee, expensive trousers against old tile, and gathered her belongings. Evelyn stared at him. "Careful, sweetheart. That suit probably costs more than my first house." Adrian found her wedding photograph beneath the counter. "Your first house was probably a better investment." Evelyn laughed. The sound changed the room. Adrian handed her the photograph by its edges. For 1 second, the severity left his face. He looked almost uncomfortable with her gratitude, as though kindness was easier to give than receive. Nora saw the man beneath the suit and reputation. Not softness exactly. Something lonelier. When Adrian returned to the booth, Nora placed a cup before him. Black, yes. She poured, then smiled. It was not her professional smile. It was small, warm, and born from what she had just witnessed. Adrian went still. Nora glanced at the cup. "Did I spill something? No." His eyes stayed on her face. "You did not." She walked away, slightly unsettled. The meeting began. Adrian asked how many people worked there, how many customers lived nearby, which repairs had been delayed, and what Maggie would change if money did not matter. New wiring, better ventilation. "A kitchen floor that does not try to kill me," Maggie said. "But I would keep the booths." "Why?" "Because people know where to sit." Adrian glanced toward Nora as she helped Daniel understand a city notice. And the staff, Maggie followed his gaze. Some can be replaced, some cannot. Celeste made a note. At 9:30, Maggie led them into the back office. 20 minutes later, she emerged with a colorless face. The diner closes in 3 weeks. Silence settled across the room. Employees would receive 3 months of pay. Moretti Urban Group would provide placement assistance and help tenants relocate. The words softened the impact without changing it. Nora looked at Adrian. "You decided before you came?" "Yes." "Then why ask all those questions?" "Because I wanted to understand what is here, so you could destroy it accurately." Celeste stepped forward. "Miss Hayes, the building is unsafe. The business has not produced a reliable profit in 4 years." Nora kept her eyes on Adrian. "You helped an old woman pick up her memories, then walked into that office and erased everyone else's." "The building is unsafe," Adrian said. "The business is insolvent. That does not make it meaningless." "I did not say it was meaningless. You did not have to." Nora turned before her voice could break. At the door, Adrian looked back. She stood beside Maggie, one hand over the older woman's trembling fingers. Nora did not smile. 3 days passed. Harbor Light kept serving breakfast while grief settled over every table. Customers brought boxes for Daniel's books. Frank copied the meatloaf recipe he claimed to hate. Evelyn asked Nora whether she had family in Chicago. "No." "Anywhere?" Nora shook her head. Her parents had died on an icy stretch of Interstate 90 when she was 20. She returned from college for the funeral and never went back. Tuition debt remained. Grief remained. Her life narrowed to rent groceries and the next shift. On Thursday morning, the black sedan returned. Adrian entered alone in dark jeans, a black sweater, and a heavy coat. Without the suit, he looked younger and more dangerous. He stopped at the counter. "Nora Hayes." She kept polishing a glass. "That depends on who is asking. I would like to speak with you. You already bought the building." "I do not own anything else worth taking." Maggie appeared from the kitchen. "She is working. I will pay for the hour," Adrian said. Nora set down the glass. "That sentence is exactly why I do not want to talk to you." His expression tightened. "You are right." The answer surprised her. He gestured toward the rear booth. 10 minutes. You may leave whenever you choose." Nora followed him because she wanted to know what kind of man admitted fault and still expected obedience. Adrian placed a folder on the table. "The redevelopment includes a community cafe. You are replacing Harbor Light with expensive coffee. I am building a new space. I do not want a copy of this diner. Copies become decoration. I want to preserve what makes this place matter. You cannot preserve something after pushing everyone out. Then help me avoid that." Nora laughed. "You think I can solve displacement with a menu? No. I think you understand people. I do not." He opened the folder. Inside was an offer for a 6-month management fellowship, paid training, health insurance, a salary. Nora read twice because the number did not look real. If she completed the program, she would receive a guaranteed assistant manager position and the chance to compete for general manager. Nora closed the folder. "I pour coffee. You run this room every morning. Maggie runs this diner. Maggie manages the business. You manage the people." He described what he had seen. Nora remembered medication schedules. She recognized trouble before it escalated. Customers trusted her. She protected the dignity of people who could give her nothing in return. "Operations can be taught," Adrian said. "Attention cannot." "Why me?" His gaze dropped to the cup between them. "Because you smiled at me. I smile at customers. Not like that." The words settled between them with an intimacy she did not trust. "You do not know me." "No." "You expect me to believe one smile made you hand me a salary and health insurance." The smile made me look. What I saw afterward made me ask questions. Nora looked toward Maggie, then at Daniel carrying another box across the street. "If I accept this, everyone will think I sold them out." "Did you?" "I do not know." Adrian pushed the folder toward her. "I am not offering charity." "What are you offering? A door?" His eyes held hers. "You still have to walk through it." That night, Nora sat on the floor of her studio apartment because the second-hand sofa had collapsed along one side. Rain tapped the window. Her laptop glowed on a milk crate. She searched Adrian Moretti's name. The official story described a brilliant developer who transformed abandoned properties into thriving communities. Photographs showed him opening clinics, funding scholarships, and shaking hands with mayors. Older articles were less polished. The Moretti name appeared beside investigations into gambling, labor racketeering, and construction fraud. Adrian had never been charged. Witnesses changed statements. Cases ended without explanation. Nora found a photograph of Adrian at 26 leaving a courthouse beside his father. He looked thinner, harder, and completely unsurprised by the cameras. A collection notice sat beside the laptop, unopened but familiar. Her rent was due in 6 days. The radiator had stopped working twice that winter, and the landlord had answered both complaints with the same tired promise. Nora had $43 in checking, $200 in savings, and a credit card she used only when hunger became more urgent than fear. She opened the fellowship offer again. The salary could clear her tuition debt within 2 years. The health insurance meant she could finally see a doctor about the pain in her lower back. The training could become a career instead of another temporary place to survive. That should have made the decision easy. Instead, Nora pictured Maggie alone in the dark diner counting the final receipts. She pictured Daniel packing books into boxes. She imagined herself standing inside a polished new cafe, while the people who taught her what community meant watched from the sidewalk. Her phone rang. A debt collector. Nora let it ring until the room became quiet again. On the wall above her mattress hung the only photograph she had framed. Her parents stood beside Lake Michigan laughing into the wind. Her mother had always told her that fear could sound remarkably sensible when it wanted control. Nora looked back at Adrian's contract. For the first time in 3 years, the future did not look like a wall. It looked like a door she did not trust. The next morning, she brought the contract to Harbor Light. Maggie read every page. "You should take it. They are closing your diner. They are closing a diner that has not paid me properly in 6 months. It feels like betrayal." Maggie set down the papers. "Do not stay poor just to prove you loved this place. What if taking his money makes me part of what destroyed it?" Maggie covered Nora's hand. "Then take his money and build something he cannot destroy." 2 days later, Nora signed the agreement. On Monday morning, she stood in the lobby of Moretti Urban Group wearing a second-hand navy blazer and shoes polished carefully enough to hide the glue. Marble rose around her. Glass elevators climbed above the city. Men and women crossed the floor with leather bags and the effortless pace of people who had never questioned whether they belonged. Nora tightened her grip on the folder and entered the elevator. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, a silver-haired woman in a dark suit was waiting. Her eyes moved from Nora's repaired shoes to the contract in her hands. Nora Hayes. "Yes, I am Helen Warren." She turned toward a corridor of glass offices. "Mr. Moretti sees potential. I measure results." Nora followed her inside. Nora followed Helen Warren through the glass corridor, trying not to stare at the city spread beneath them. From the 15th floor, Chicago looked clean and obedient. The river curved between towers like a ribbon of dark steel. Trains moved along elevated tracks in neat silver lines. Down there, Harbor Light sat behind salt-stained windows with a broken sign and 3 weeks left to live. Up here, nothing looked temporary. Helen opened the door to a conference room. 5 people were already seated around a long table. Each had a laptop, a leather notebook, and the polished appearance of someone who knew what belonged on a business card. Nora took the only empty chair. The man beside her glanced at the folder in her hands. "You are the diner waitress." His tone was not cruel. That made it worse. "Nora Hayes, Grant Ellis, Hospitality Operations." He offered his hand and smiled. "I have managed restaurants in 3 states. Then you should do well here." His smile changed slightly. Helen closed the door. "Welcome to the Management Development Program. You are not here because you are finished products. You are here because someone believes you may become useful. Her gaze rested on Nora for half a second longer than it rested on the others. Potential is cheap. Execution is expensive. She distributed thick binders. For the first hour, Helen spoke about labor cost, inventory loss, guest retention, and operating margins. Nora wrote until her hand cramped. At Harbor Light, money had been something Maggie worried about behind a closed office door. Here, every cup napkin hour and broken plate became a number. Helen displayed a sample profit statement on the screen. Nora, what concerns you? Nora studied the columns. She understood rent. She understood wages. She understood how many cups of coffee had to be sold before Maggie stopped looking frightened. But the words on the screen seemed designed to keep people like her silent. Grant shifted in his chair. Nora heard the faint movement and felt heat rise along her neck. "The labor percentage is too high," she said. Helen did not react. Why? Because the schedule was built around the manager's convenience instead of customer traffic. One of the other trainees looked up. Nora pointed toward the hourly sales figures. "You have 5 people working between 2 and 4, but sales drop after lunch. Then you have 3 people at 6 when sales rise again." Someone copied the same schedule across the week without looking at when customers actually came in. Helen studied her. "What would you change?" "I would move 2 hours from the afternoon shift into the evening. I would also ask why sales fall so sharply after lunch before cutting anything else. Why ask? Because maybe the problem is not too many workers. Maybe the problem is that nobody wants to come back." The room went quiet. Helen closed the report. Acceptable. It was not praise. Nora felt as if she had been handed a medal. The training continued from 8 in the morning until 6 at night. Afterward, the other trainees left for apartments with doormen or dinners in neighborhoods Nora knew only from bus advertisements. Nora took 2 trains home. At night, she studied at her kitchen counter while the radiator knocked against the wall. She learned the difference between gross profit and net income. She memorized health codes. She watched videos about commercial kitchen design until her eyes burned. At Harbor Light, Nora had learned by doing. She knew when coffee tasted old and when eggs stayed beneath the heat lamp too long. She could tell which customers would send back food and which would eat a bad meal rather than cause trouble. Now, she had to translate instinct into language executives respected. Helen made no attempt to make the process gentle. On the 4th day, she handed Nora a staffing exercise. Nora completed it in 20 minutes. Helen returned it covered in red marks. "You scheduled a person for 10 consecutive hours." He asked for more hours. Wanting hours does not remove fatigue. "I worked 10-hour shifts at Harbor Light. And did you perform equally well in hour 10? Nora did not answer. Helen tapped the page. "Poverty teaches people to tolerate bad systems. It does not make those systems efficient." Nora looked at the corrected schedule. She had never heard anyone describe her endurance that way. Not strength, not virtue. Evidence of a bad system. She rewrote the schedule. 2 weeks into the program, Helen assigned Nora responsibility for choosing a local bakery for the first project tasting. Nora visited 4 businesses in the neighborhood surrounding the development. The first bakery had beautiful pastries, but prices too high for the cafe's budget. The second used frozen dough. The third owner spoke to Nora as if she were a child carrying someone else's money. The fourth was a narrow shop called Rosa's Bread and Cakes. The owner, Rosa Martinez, was 62 and worked beside her daughter and grandson. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon butter and warm sugar. Rosa made guava pastries, apple turnovers, and a chocolate cake so rich Nora closed her eyes after the first bite. Rosa's prices were fair. Her business was local. She employed 6 people who lived within walking distance. Nora wanted her to succeed. She signed the preliminary supply agreement. The tasting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Adrian Helen, the architect, 2 investors, and several department heads would attend. At 11 that morning, Rosa called. Her delivery oven had failed. Half the pastries were unfinished. Nora pressed the phone against her ear. How many can you deliver? Maybe 60%. We need everything by 2. I know, sweetheart. I am trying. Nora looked at the clock. Send what you have. I will figure out the rest. At 1:30, the first delivery arrived. The boxes were warm but incorrectly labeled. 2 contained pastries with nuts, though the tasting sheet identified them as safe for guests with allergies. Nora's stomach tightened. Helen entered the preparation room. Is there a problem? Nora wanted to say no. She wanted 10 more minutes, another oven, a miracle. Yes. Helen waited. Nora explained. Did you inspect the bakery's production capacity? I visited the kitchen. That was not my question. No. Did you verify backup equipment? No. Did you confirm allergen controls? I asked. Did you document the answer? Nora swallowed. No. Helen looked at the boxes. Then you did not confirm anything. The investors arrived at 2. Nora contacted another bakery and purchased emergency replacements at nearly 3 times the planned cost. The tasting began 25 minutes late. No one became ill. No one shouted. The investors still sampled coffee and discussed furniture, but Nora knew she had failed. After the meeting, Helen called the entire project team into the conference room. The damaged pastries sat on the table between them. Explain what happened, Helen said. Nora stood at the front. She could feel Grant watching her. I chose a supplier because the food was good, the price was fair, and the business belonged to the neighborhood. Were those bad reasons? No. Were they enough? No. Nora forced herself to continue. I wanted Rosa's bakery to succeed. I treated that desire as evidence that she was ready for the contract. I did not inspect her backup systems. I did not verify allergy procedures. I did not create a second supplier plan. Helen folded her hands. Who is responsible? I am. Rosa had made mistakes, but Nora had signed the agreement. She would not save herself by pushing the failure onto a woman with fewer lawyers and less money. Grant raised his hand. The supplier failed to meet her obligation. That should be documented. It will be, Nora said. But I selected her without a proper review. Helen watched Nora for a long moment. Correct the process. That evening, Nora went to Rosa's bakery. The broken oven had been pulled away from the wall. Rosa sat at a metal table with her face in her hands. I am sorry, she said. I embarrassed you. We both made mistakes. You could choose someone else. I might have to. Rosa looked away. Nora sat across from her. But first, we are going to find out what you need to handle the contract safely. They worked until midnight. Nora created a production calendar and labeling system. Rosa's daughter contacted a nearby church about renting its certified kitchen during equipment failures. They found a repair company that offered payment terms. Nora also selected a second supplier for emergencies. When she presented the revised plan Monday morning, Helen read every page. You spent your weekend on this. Yes. Why? Because dropping Rosa would protect us. Helping her become reliable protects the neighborhood too. Helen signed the approval form. Begin with a limited contract. Review in 30 days. Nora exhaled. Helen looked up. Do not confuse this with forgiveness. I would not dare. For the first time, Nora thought she saw the edge of a smile. Adrian appeared in one of the training sessions the following week. He entered without announcement and took a seat near the wall. Nora had seen him only twice since joining the company. Once across the lobby surrounded by executives. Once through the glass wall of his office standing with Celeste and 2 men in dark suits. His presence altered the room. People sat straighter, voices sharpened. Helen continued as if he were not there. The session concerned community response to the waterfront development. A public meeting was scheduled that evening. Residents had demanded answers about rent increases, business closures, and construction noise. Grant presented the company's prepared talking points. The project would create jobs, property values would rise, new residents would increase local spending. Nora listened until she could not stay quiet. Those answers will make people angrier. Grant turned toward her. They are accurate. They do not answer what people are asking. What are they asking? Whether they will still belong there when the project is finished. Adrian's gaze settled on her. Helen closed Grant's presentation. Nora, you will attend the meeting. The meeting took place in the gymnasium of a public school near the river. Every folding chair was occupied. People stood along the walls holding property notices, rent letters, and photographs of businesses already closed. Adrian sat at the center table with Celeste, Helen, and members of the development team. Nora sat at the end. The first speaker was a mother whose rent had increased by 40%. The second owned a barber shop that had operated for 23 years. Daniel Park stood and held up a copy of his new lease. "You say this project will serve the community," he said. "Which community?" Applause broke across the gym. Adrian leaned toward the microphone. "The development includes public space employment opportunities and support for local businesses." A man near the back laughed. "You tear down our homes, then sell us nostalgia with $6 coffee." The room erupted. Adrian waited for the noise to settle. Nora knew the expression on his face. It was the same calm he had worn inside Harbor Light when she accused him of erasing people. Controlled, patient, ready to win. He began speaking about market forces and building safety. Nora touched his arm. Adrian stopped. She did not ask permission. She leaned toward the microphone. "He is right." The room quieted. Celeste turned toward her sharply. Nora looked at the residents. A new cafe does not replace Harbor Light. A reading room does not erase a bookstore. A relocation payment does not give someone back 20 years in the same building. Adrian stared at her, but Nora continued. "I accepted a job on this project because I believed something good could still be built here. But if the people who already live in this neighborhood cannot afford to enter it, then it is not a community project. It is decoration." Someone in the audience said, "Exactly." Nora opened the folder in front of her. She had spent 3 nights writing proposals after reviewing similar projects in other cities. She recommended discounted commercial leases for returning businesses, a permanent advisory board made up of residents, a hiring priority for displaced workers, affordable food at common ground, free meeting space for local organizations, a fund for tenants forced to relocate. Celeste whispered, "Those commitments have not been approved." Nora kept her eyes on Adrian. He could dismiss her in front of everyone. He could remind her who owned the company and who had given her the chair. Adrian looked down the table at the finance director. "What is the projected cost?" The man gave an uncomfortable estimate. One of the investors leaned toward Adrian. "That changes the return profile." Adrian did not look away from Nora. "Put it in the budget." The gym became quiet again. The investor protested. Adrian turned to him. "You heard me." After the meeting, the team gathered in the hallway. Celeste closed the door behind them. "You publicly committed the company to several $1,000,000 in unapproved costs." Nora faced her. "I presented options. You presented them in a room where refusing would have created a public relations crisis. That is one interpretation. That is the only interpretation." Adrian lifted a hand. Celeste stopped. He looked at Nora. "You cornered me. You hired me because I care. I am beginning to understand the financial consequences of that decision." His mouth curved slightly. Nora stared at him. "Are you smiling? Do not make it important." Celeste walked away before her brother could see her expression. 3 days later, Adrian invited Nora to dinner with the project architect. Nora read the message twice. She found Adrian outside the main conference room. Is this required? It is a design meeting. At a restaurant with no prices on the menu, Marcus chose the restaurant. Of course he did. Adrian studied her. You can decline. Nora appreciated that he said it without pressure. I will attend. I will send a car. I can take the train. The meeting ends late. I have survived public transportation after dark. I do not doubt it. Then why the car? Because your time belongs to the company during a business meeting. The company can avoid wasting 2 hours of it. Nora folded her arms. You make controls sound very reasonable. Something in his expression shifted. I will ask the driver to wait 2 blocks from your apartment. That is still a car. Yes. She almost smiled. Fine. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a hotel along the river. Glass walls revealed the city glowing against the night. Marcus Park rose when Nora entered. He was in his 40s with tired eyes and a warm handshake. Daniel Park is my uncle, he said. Nora blinked. The bookstore owner? He told me you were the only person in the room who spoke honestly at the public meeting. Adrian pulled out Nora's chair. Daniel has strong opinions. He learned that from my grandmother, Marcus said. Dinner began with floor plans spread across the table. The cafe was beautiful. High ceilings, tall windows, brass fixtures, clean lines. It was also wrong. Nora moved through the design with her finger. Too many tables in the center. Marcus looked at Adrian. What would you change? People need choices. Some want to be seen. Some want to disappear for an hour. The room should have corners. She pointed toward the windows. Booths here. Smaller tables near the front. A long table for students and groups. The center tables create more seats, Marcus said. They also make everyone feel exposed. Adrian watched her. What else? Nora found an unused section near the east wall. A reading room. Marcus sat back. That reduces seating by almost 15%. Your uncle is losing his bookstore. Marcus's expression changed. Nora continued. Give him a smaller space inside the cafe. Bookshelves, reading chairs, children's story hours. Let him sell books without paying the full market rent. Marcus looked at the plans. The cafe would become a destination. Adrian asked, would it be profitable? People can buy coffee anywhere, Nora said. They come back to places where part of their life is waiting for them. Adrian approved the change. Later, after Marcus left, Nora and Adrian remained at the table while rain moved across the windows. You were quiet tonight, Adrian said. I talked through most of dinner. You spoke about the cafe. What else should I speak about at a cafe meeting? You. Nora looked down at her untouched wine. There is not much to tell. I doubt that. She considered giving him the easy version. College became too expensive. Life changed. She needed work. Instead, she told him about the phone call from the hospital, the drive through freezing rain, her mother's coat folded over the back of a chair in the emergency waiting room. I went home for the funeral, Nora said. I never went back to school. Why, I could not understand why anyone cared about exams. My parents were gone and professors were sending messages about missed assignments. Adrian's voice softened. You were 20. I was old enough to know bills did not stop because I was grieving. He looked toward the city. I am sorry. The words held no performance. Nora asked, What about you? My mother died when I was 14. And your father? Adrian's face became unreadable. He believed grief was something men should convert into ambition. That sounds healthy. It was effective. He told her about growing up above a butcher shop on the south side. Men visited at night. Conversations stopped when Adrian entered the room. Everyone knew his father's name and no one said it casually. I learned very young that power belonged to men with guns or money, Adrian said. Nora took a sip of wine. So you decided to have both? Yes. She laughed softly. Adrian did not. The sound died in her throat. For 1 second, she wondered whether he had been joking at all. The driver took her home. Adrian remained in the car. When they reached Nora's building, she felt embarrassed by the cracked steps and rusted railing. Adrian noticed. "You do not need to apologize for where you live." "I did not apologize. You looked as if you wanted to." Nora reached for the door handle. "You notice too much. So do you." Their eyes met in the dark car. The space between them felt smaller than it had a moment before. Nora looked away first. The attraction frightened her because it did not feel like gratitude. Gratitude was clean. This was not. At work the next morning, she went directly to Adrian's office. Celeste was leaving as Nora arrived. Her gaze moved between Nora and her brother. "I have a meeting," Celeste said. "Try not to redesign the rest of the company before lunch." When the door closed, Adrian leaned against his desk. "What is wrong?" "We need rules. About the cafe. About us." His expression became still. Nora forced herself to continue. "You sign my checks." "The company signs your checks. You own the company." "I see. Do you?" "Yes." She had prepared a longer speech, but his calm made it harder. "I do not want to wonder whether I earned something because you like me. You earned your place here. And if I make you angry, I do not punish employees for personal reasons. Men with power always believe they use it fairly." Adrian absorbed that without defending himself. "What do you want?" "I report to Helen. Only Helen. You do not decide my salary, promotion, discipline, or contract." He walked around the desk and stopped several feet from her. And outside work, Nora's pulse quickened. There is no outside work. Is that a rule or an observation? Both. For the first time, frustration showed in his face. But he nodded. "I will transfer all authority over your position to Helen. Just like that, you asked for something reasonable. I expected an argument. I am trying to become less predictable." The transfer was completed that afternoon. Adrian kept his distance. Nora hated how much she noticed. The final preparation event took place 6 weeks later. Investors, neighborhood representatives, journalists, and future employees gathered inside the nearly finished cafe. At 4:10, a pipe burst behind the kitchen wall. Water spread across the floor. The contractor shut down the kitchen. The lead investor threatened to leave. A junior employee named Kayla began crying beside the service station. Grant stood in the middle of the room, issuing 3 instructions at once. Nora stepped onto a chair. "Everyone listen." The room quieted. She moved the tasting service to the covered terrace. She contacted the hotel kitchen across the street and negotiated temporary preparation space. She sent 2 employees to collect portable coffee equipment from Harbor Light before Maggie closed for the night. She placed Grant in charge of guest communication. He opened his mouth to object. "Use your 3 states of experience," Nora said. He went. Nora found Kayla in the hallway. "I cannot do this," the young woman whispered. "Yes, you can. I dropped an entire tray. Then the floor has been punished. Now we move." Kayla laughed despite herself. By 5, guests stood beneath terrace heaters drinking coffee while rain shone on the city streets below. Marcus turned the construction delay into a tour. Daniel read aloud from a Chicago history book in the unfinished reading room. Rosa served warm pastries from carefully labeled trays. The event became less polished than planned. It also became alive. Helen watched Nora move through the crowd solving problems before they reached Adrian. The following morning, she called Nora into her office. A contract waited on the desk. General Manager Helen said. Nora did not touch it. "I thought there would be another interview." There was. Yesterday. Nora looked through the pages. "You earned it," Helen said. Through the glass wall, Adrian stood in the corridor speaking with Marcus. He did not enter. He did not claim the decision. He looked toward Nora and lifted his coffee cup. Nora smiled at him. This time she knew exactly what she was doing. Common Ground opened on a cold spring morning. Evelyn claimed a booth near the window. Frank ordered 2 coffees. Daniel arranged books in the reading room while complaining that customers folded page corners. Maggie stood beneath the new sign with tears in her eyes. You kept the pie, your recipe. You changed the cinnamon. Rosa threatened me. Good woman. The cafe filled. Students gathered around the long table. Construction workers argued over the price of espresso. Children sat on the floor during Daniel's first story hour. Not everyone loved it. An old Harbor Light customer accused Nora of turning memory into a brand. A food critic called the space carefully manufactured authenticity. Nora read the review after closing. Adrian found her alone at the counter. It is not completely wrong, she said. Most criticism contains enough truth to be painful. We built this. Yes. What if it is only a prettier version of displacement? Adrian looked around the room. Daniel's handwritten recommendations filled a board near the bookshelves. Rosa's empty pastry trays sat near the kitchen. A group of neighborhood nurses had left flyers for a free health clinic. Anything built by human hands is manufactured, Adrian said. That does not make it false. Nora stacked 2 cups. We still have work to do. We do. They reached for the same chair. Their hands touched. Neither moved. The cafe was quiet around them. Streetlight pressed against the windows. Adrian's fingers rested beneath hers, warm and still. Nora looked up. For one suspended moment, the distance she had insisted upon felt less like safety and more like fear. Then the front door opened. Celeste entered with a man Nora had never seen before. The man wore a dark coat and did not look at the cafe. He looked only at Adrian. Adrian removed his hand from beneath Nora's. The warmth left his face. Lock the office, he told Celeste. The man stepped closer and spoke too quietly for Nora to hear. Whatever he said made Adrian glance toward her. Not with affection, with alarm. The man in the dark coat spoke close to Adrian's ear. Nora could not hear the words, but she saw the effect. Adrian's shoulders became rigid. His face emptied of warmth. Even the hand resting beside the coffee cup curled slowly into a fist. Celeste locked the office door. Who is he? Nora asked. Adrian kept his eyes on the stranger. Cole Ramsey, head of security. Cole looked like a man who had spent years learning how to disappear in crowded rooms. His hair was cut short, his suit was plain, and his eyes moved constantly between doors, windows, and reflections in the glass. He offered Nora a brief nod. Ms. Hayes, you know who I am. It is my job to know who matters to Mr. Moretti. Something about the sentence made Adrian look at him sharply. Cole did not apologize. Celeste lowered her voice. Leon Sokolov has people in Chicago. The name meant nothing to Nora. It clearly meant something to Adrian. How many, he asked. We confirmed 2. There may be more, where one was seen near the River Project. Another checked into a hotel under a false identity. Nora looked from Adrian to Celeste. Should I leave? Adrian answered too quickly. Yes, Celeste said. No. They turned toward each other. Celeste continued. If we send her away without explanation, she will ask questions. She can ask them tomorrow. Nora crossed her arms. I am standing 3 feet away. Adrian faced her. There is no immediate danger. Cole's expression did not change, but Nora noticed that he did not confirm the statement. What kind of danger is not immediate? She asked. A business dispute. With men who require a head of security, most disputes involving my company require security. It was the kind of answer that sounded complete until she listened to what had been left out. Nora picked up her coat. You are right. I should leave. Adrian stepped toward her. I will have someone drive you. I know how to get home. Nora. She stopped at the door. His voice had changed. The authority was still there, but something less controlled moved beneath it. Concern. She wanted to ask why a business dispute made him look afraid for her. Instead, she said, "Good night, Mr. Moretti." The use of his last name landed exactly as she intended. Adrian watched her leave. Outside, cold air swept off the river and pressed beneath Nora's coat. She walked toward the train with her hands in her pockets, telling herself the tension inside the cafe had nothing to do with her. A black car followed at a distance. She noticed it after the third turn. When she stopped, it stopped. Nora pulled out her phone and called Adrian. He answered immediately. "What happened?" "There is a car following me." A pause. "What street are you on?" She told him. "That is Cole. You put security behind me without asking. I wanted to make sure you reached home safely. You could have told me. You would have refused. That does not make it acceptable." Adrian exhaled. "You are right." She had expected resistance. His agreement left her more frustrated. "I do not want to live like someone is watching me. Neither do I." The quiet honesty in his voice slowed her anger. Nora looked at the black car reflected in a shop window. "Who is Leon Sokolov?" "A man I knew years ago. What does he want? I do not know." "Do you believe that?" Another pause. "No." Nora waited. Adrian gave her nothing else. She ended the call. For the next 2 weeks, life at Common Ground became too busy for questions. The cafe found its rhythm. Morning belonged to nurses finishing overnight shifts, construction crews, and parents carrying tired children. Afternoons filled with students and people working behind laptop screens. Evenings brought book clubs, neighborhood meetings, and customers who stayed because the room felt warmer than the streets outside. Nora learned the names of every employee. She learned that Kayla sang under her breath when nervous. That Luis always arrived early but forgot to clock in. That Rosa's grandson was brilliant with numbers and terrible with customers. She also learned that success created new problems. A group of investors wanted to raise prices. The kitchen manager wanted to remove the cheapest breakfast. A consultant suggested replacing Daniel's reading room with additional seating. Nora refused. Helen supported her when the numbers allowed it and challenged her when they did not. Adrian stayed out of daily decisions as promised. His distance should have made things easier. It did not. Nora noticed him in meetings before he spoke. She noticed when he loosened his tie near the end of a long day. She noticed the small scar near his jaw and the way he rubbed his thumb across his knuckles when thinking. Their conversations remained professional. The silence around those conversations did not. One night the cafe reached its first profitable month. The staff celebrated after closing. Maggie brought a bottle of cheap champagne. Daniel complained that the music was too loud while tapping one foot beneath his chair. Adrian arrived late. He stood near the entrance for a moment watching Nora laugh with Kayla. Something softened in his face. Maggie saw it. She leaned toward Nora. "That man looks at you like he is trying to remember how breathing works." Nora nearly dropped her glass. "He is looking at the room. He owns half the room. He is looking at you." "Maggie, I am old, not blind." Adrian approached. Maggie smiled at him. "Mr. Moretti, thank you for joining the poor people." "Maggie." His tone held reluctant affection. She handed him a paper cup of champagne. "No crystal tonight. I will survive." By midnight, the staff had gone. Nora stayed to finish the register. Adrian helped stack chairs, even though his movements made it clear that he had never stacked a chair in his life. "You are doing that wrong," Nora said. "There is a wrong way to move furniture. You are proving there is." He placed the chair down. "Demonstrate." She stepped beside him and turned the chair. "Grip here. Lift from the bottom." Adrian followed her instructions. Their shoulders touched. Neither spoke. Rain brushed the windows. The overhead lights had been dimmed, leaving the cafe in pools of amber and shadow. Adrian set the chair on the table. 1 month profitable, he said. Barely. Profit is still profit. Do not sound so excited. People may think you are a businessman. I have worked hard to create that impression. Nora smiled. Adrian watched her. The room seemed to narrow. He moved closer, then stopped before the distance vanished. Nora. She knew what he was asking. The answer should have been simple. She had made rules. She had protected the line between gratitude and desire. But he had respected every boundary she created. He had transferred authority over her job. He had accepted her criticism in front of investors. He had given up profitable space for Daniel's books and put millions into promises she had forced him to make. None of that erased the power he carried. It did make him harder to dismiss. "You still own the company," she said. "I do. You are still the reason I have this job. You are the reason you kept it." That sounds practiced. I have practiced not saying it for weeks. The admission made her heart stumble. Adrian looked at her with none of the smooth confidence he used in boardrooms. "I wanted to kiss you the first night we discussed the design." Nora's breath caught. "At the restaurant." "In the car outside your building. You barely knew me. I knew enough to want more." She should have stepped back. Instead, she said, "You did not answer the important question." "What question?" "Why did you stop?" "Because you looked at me as if you wanted to trust me, and I had not earned it." The answer reached somewhere deeper than attraction. Adrian took another careful step. "Tell me to leave." Nora's pulse beat hard at the base of her throat. "I should." "That is not what I asked." She looked at his mouth, then into his eyes. The decision felt frightening because it belonged entirely to her. Nora closed the distance. The first kiss was gentle. Adrian did not pull her closer. His hands settled lightly at her waist, giving her room to move away. The restraint lasted only until Nora gripped the front of his shirt. Then the kiss deepened. Months of tension broke through the careful space between them. Adrian's breath caught. One hand moved to the back of her neck, warm and steady. Nora felt the edge of the counter against her hip. The world outside the windows disappeared. When they separated, Adrian kept his forehead against hers. "I have imagined that too many times," he said. "Was it better in your imagination?" "No." Nora pulled back. His expression changed. "No, it was never this dangerous." The word settled between them. Not dangerous because of Leon Sokolov or the man in the dark coat. Dangerous because Nora could feel how quickly Adrian might become important to her. She took her coat. "I need to go home." Adrian did not stop her. "I will call you tomorrow. Do not make it a business call." A slow smile touched his mouth. "I will try." Their relationship began quietly. Adrian took Nora to restaurants where waiters knew his name, but she preferred the small places hidden beneath train tracks. She brought him to a taco shop near her apartment where he ruined a white shirt with hot sauce and refused to admit the food was too spicy. He spent evenings at her studio sitting on the floor because the replacement sofa had not arrived. "You own buildings," Nora said. "You could probably purchase this one before dinner." "I could. Do not. I was not planning to." You looked at the ceiling. "There is water damage. There is character. There is mold. Expensive places call that texture." He laughed more around her. Not the brief, controlled smile he used in public, a real laugh that surprised him every time it escaped. Nora met him inside his world, too. At a charity gala in a hotel ballroom, women wore gowns that looked painted onto their bodies. Men discussed millions over tiny plates of food. Adrian moved through them with practiced ease. Everyone wanted something. A donation, a contract, an introduction, a photograph. Nora stood beside him and watched people change when money entered the conversation. A developer named Victor Hale kissed Nora's hand and asked where Adrian had found her. Adrian's jaw tightened. Nora answered before he could. At work. Victor laughed. I suppose talent appears in unusual places. So does arrogance, Nora said. Adrian looked down to hide his smile. Later in the car, Nora removed her shoes. You enjoyed that, more than I should have. You could have warned me everyone in that room was hunting. They consider it networking. What do you call it Tuesday? She looked at him. Does anyone ever ask how you are? You do. The answer was quiet. Nora rested her head against the seat. Then how are you? Adrian looked through the window at the moving city, tired of what being useful to everyone. She took his hand. He stared at their joined fingers as if the gesture contained something he did not understand. Their arguments were as real as the tenderness. Adrian tried to replace Nora's failing car after it stalled on Lakeshore Drive. A new sedan appeared outside Common Ground with a ribbon on the hood. Nora stared at it. Send it back. Adrian looked genuinely confused. It is safe. It is expensive. That is not a problem. It is a problem for me. I bought you a car, Nora. I did not buy you. You do not understand why those things can feel similar. His expression hardened. I would never use a gift to control you. You would not have to. The size of the gift does it for you. They stood in the alley behind the cafe while snow began falling around them. Adrian looked at the car. What do you want me to do? Ask before changing my life. He nodded. The sedan disappeared an hour later. The following week, he asked whether he could pay for repairs on Nora's car as a loan. She agreed. It was the first time she saw him choose partnership over instinct. The relationship slowly became visible. Kayla noticed the way Adrian brought Nora coffee and already knew how she took it. Helen noticed the late dinners listed as project meetings. Maggie noticed everything and said nothing, which was more frightening than her comments. Celeste remained polite but distant. Nora sensed disapproval in every perfectly controlled conversation. One afternoon, Nora entered Adrian's office while he was in a meeting. A photograph lay on his desk. Adrian was younger in it, perhaps 26. He stood beside his father outside a courthouse. 3 other men surrounded them. Nora recognized one from a news article about organized crime. The office door opened. Adrian stopped when he saw the photograph in her hand. You should not be in here alone. I came to leave the supplier report. He took the photograph from her and placed it inside a drawer. Who were they? Business associates of my father. One was convicted of murder. Adrian closed the drawer. My father knew many dangerous men. Did you? Yes. The honesty surprised her. Do you still know? She searched his face. Is Leon Sokolov one of them? Adrian's eyes sharpened. Who told you that? No one. You reacted to his name like it was a gunshot. He walked toward the window. The Moretti family had associations that were not legitimate. Associations my father was involved in organized crime. The words entered the room without drama. Nora's stomach tightened. And you, I chose a different direction. That is not an answer. It is the answer I can give you. Cannot or will not, Adrian turned. Some history is dangerous even after it is finished. Then maybe it is not finished. For a moment, he looked as though he wanted to tell her everything. Then the walls returned. It is finished. Nora left unconvinced. The warning signs became harder to ignore. Cole began appearing more often at Common Ground. Adrian changed cars twice in 1 week. A man watched them through a restaurant window, then disappeared before Cole reached the street. At Nora's apartment, Cole inspected the locks without explanation. I did not request a security review, Nora said. Mr. Moretti did. Of course he did. Cole tested the window latch. He worries. He controls. Sometimes the difference is whether the threat is real. Nora looked at him. Is it Cole stopped moving? I would not be here if it were not. That night, Adrian arrived at Nora's apartment after midnight. His knuckles were bruised. Nora saw them when he removed his coat. What happened? Nothing. Your hand disagrees. He went to the sink and ran cold water over his fingers. A man made a mistake. What kind of mistake? He followed you. Nora felt the room contract. The man outside the restaurant. Yes. What did you do? I made sure he will not do it again. She stared at him. Did you hurt him? Adrian turned off the water. I asked questions. With your fist. His silence answered. Nora stepped back. Who was he? He worked for someone I knew. Sokolov. Adrian's face changed. Do not say that name where others can hear it. We are alone. That does not mean the room is safe. Nora looked around her tiny apartment. For the first time, it no longer felt private. You brought this here. Pain flashed across Adrian's face. Yes. He left before dawn. 2 days later, Celeste asked Nora to meet for coffee. They sat in a quiet hotel lounge far from common ground. Celeste did not remove her coat. My brother believes he can keep you safe by deciding what you are allowed to know. Nora waited. He learned that from our father. What was your father? Celeste looked toward the window. A man who confused fear with respect. And Adrian. He spent his life trying not to become him. That is not what I asked. Celeste's expression softened by a fraction. Adrian is not cruel. He is capable of cruelty when he believes it protects someone. Nora thought of the bruises on his hand. Why are you telling me this? Because he loves you. The words struck harder than expected. Nora looked down at her coffee. He has never said that. He would consider saying it a form of surrender. That sounds like Adrian. Celeste leaned closer. My brother will protect you with his life. That is supposed to reassure me. It should not. Men like Adrian confuse protection with control. Sometimes protection arrives after the danger they created. Nora met her eyes. What danger? Celeste hesitated. I cannot tell you his story for him, but you can tell me to be afraid. I can tell you to demand the truth before you are forced to learn it from someone who wants to hurt him. Nora left the hotel determined to confront Adrian. The confrontation never happened. That evening, Nora closed Common Ground alone. Rain covered the windows in silver lines. The last employee had gone home. Nora counted the register while an old soul song played softly through the speakers. A black SUV waited across the street. Its engine remained running. Nora watched it for several seconds. Her phone vibrated. A message from Adrian appeared. Lock the back entrance. Cole is 5 minutes away. Nora looked toward the rear hallway. The back door stood open. 3 men entered. Their coats were wet. Their faces were calm. The lead man glanced at Nora's hand moving beneath the counter. Do not press it. Nora stopped before reaching the alarm. The cafe is closed. We are not here for coffee. The man picked up a framed photograph from opening day. Nora stood beside Adrian beneath the Common Ground sign. His thumb rested over Adrian's face. You are Nora Hayes. Who is asking a man who remembers what Adrian Moretti owes him? He examined her slowly. I expected someone different. Prettier. The man smiled. Colder. Someone who understood the kind of man she was sleeping beside. Nora kept her voice steady. Get out. There it is. What? The courage he keeps talking about. The man set the photograph down. Do you know when you became important to Adrian Moretti? Nora said nothing. It was not when he hired you. It was not when he kissed you. He leaned closer. It was the first time you smiled at him. Nora's fingers tightened against the counter. A broke waitress smiled at a mafia heir as if he were an ordinary man. By the end of that day, he could not let you go. The man removed a silver coin from his pocket. The initials LS were engraved on one side. That smile gave him hope. He placed it on the counter. It also gave us a target. Nora stared at the coin. What does Sokolov want? The man's smile disappeared. For Adrian to remember who built his empire. The three men left through the back door. Nora locked it behind them. Her hands shook so badly that the keys fell to the floor. She called Adrian. He answered before the first full ring. Nora. 3 men came into the cafe. Silence. Not confusion. Recognition. Did they touch you? No. Did they give you anything? She looked at the coin. Adrian, who is Leon Sokolov. His breathing changed. Lock every door. Stay away from the windows. You know him. I am coming to get you. They said you were Mafia. Nora. That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters until you are safe. Headlights swept across the cafe. A black sedan stopped outside. Adrian stepped into the rain before the driver could open his door. Cole and another security guard followed. Adrian saw Nora through the glass. For 1 second, the controlled businessman disappeared. He looked terrified. Nora opened the door. Adrian reached for her. She stepped back and held up the coin. What did you do? His hand fell to his side. Not here. Then where? My home. I am not going anywhere until you tell me whether those men were lying. They were not. The truth landed without mercy. Adrian took Nora to his penthouse. Cole searched the rooms while Celeste made calls from the study. Security guards stood near the elevator and balcony doors. Adrian poured himself a drink but did not touch it. My father was part of an organized crime family, he said. When I was 25, I wanted to build something outside his control. Banks would not lend to me. So you borrowed from Sokolov? Yes. What did he want in return interest? Access. Silence. Nora sat across from him. What kind of access? Adrian looked at the untouched drink. Some construction contracts moved money that did not come from legitimate businesses. You laundered money. My company did. Your company does not make decisions. His jaw tightened. I approved the contracts. Nora felt cold despite the fire burning behind him. How long? 4 years. And then I repaid him. I closed the accounts. I removed every contractor connected to him. You just walked away. I tried. Nora heard the word. Tried, not succeeded. Were people hurt? Adrian did not answer immediately. The silence became unbearable. How many people lost homes because of you? I do not know. You know the numbers. Numbers are not people. They were people when you needed their buildings. Adrian flinched. Nora stood. You let me believe you were a ruthless businessman trying to do better. I am. You let me love a version of you with the worst pages removed. Adrian looked at her. The word love hung between them, spoken for the first time in anger. I wanted to tell you. You wanted to keep me. Yes. The honesty hurt more than denial. Nora reached for her coat. Adrian moved toward her, then stopped. Where are you going home? You cannot stay there tonight. Do not tell me what I can do. Sokolov's men know your name, and whose fault is that mine? The answer broke through her anger for one dangerous second. Adrian's voice lowered. Let me protect you until we understand what he wants. I need space. Nora. No calls. No messages. I will contact you when I am ready. Pain crossed his face. He hid it quickly. All right. She allowed Cole to drive her home and remain outside because fear was stronger than pride. 4 days passed. Adrian kept his promise. Nora worked, slept badly, and checked every reflection in every window. Cole's car remained across the street each night. Before dawn on the 5th morning, pounding shook her apartment door. Nora looked through the peephole. Cole stood in the hallway, pale and breathing hard. She opened the door. "What happened? We need to move you now." Why Cole's eyes met hers. "Adrian has been shot." The words did not sound real inside Nora's apartment. For 1 second, she heard only the radiator knocking against the wall and the distant growl of a truck on the street below. Then the room tilted. "Is he alive?" "Yes." Cole stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He was leaving a private parking garage after a late meeting. A vehicle came through the exit. 3 shots were fired. 1 hit his shoulder. "Where is he, Northwestern Memorial? He is in surgery." Nora reached for the back of a chair. "Was it Sokolov?" "We do not know." Cole looked toward the window, then at the hallway behind her. "You have 5 minutes. Pack identification medication and enough clothes for 2 days. I am going to the hospital. You are going to a secure location." "No." "Nora, the man I love has been shot." The words left her before she could measure them. Cole's expression softened, but only slightly. "That is exactly why you cannot make decisions based on panic. I am not hiding in a house while he wakes up alone. He has Celeste. He asked for space when I needed it. I am not giving him abandonment in return." Cole watched her for a long moment. "You will follow every instruction." "Yes." "You will not leave the vehicle unless I tell you." "Yes." "You will not answer calls from unknown numbers." "Yes." "And if I say move, you move." Nora grabbed her coat. "I understand." They entered the hospital through a service entrance beneath the loading dock. 2 security guards met them beside a freight elevator. One carried a medical bag. The other kept his hand near the inside of his coat. The private floor had been emptied. The silence felt unnatural for a hospital. No families crowded the hallway. No television murmured from open rooms. Only armed men, pale walls, and the sharp smell of disinfectant. Celeste stood outside the surgical waiting room. Her hair had come loose from its careful knot. There was blood on the cuff of her cream blouse. Nora stopped. "Is that his?" Celeste looked down as if noticing it for the first time. "Yes." "What happened?" "He called me from the garage after the first shot." Celeste's voice remained steady, but her fingers trembled around her phone. "He said Nora's name before he said where he was." Nora closed her eyes. The last thing she had said to Adrian was that she needed space. He had listened. Now a surgeon was digging a bullet out of his body. Celeste took Nora's hand. "He is stubborn. That is not a medical condition. With Adrian, it might be." The surgeon emerged nearly an hour later. The bullet had passed through the upper shoulder. It missed the major artery by less than an inch. There was significant tissue damage, but no injury to the spine or lungs. Adrian would live. Nora's knees weakened so suddenly that Celeste caught her arm. The surgeon allowed one visitor after Adrian was moved to recovery. Celeste looked at Nora. "Go. You are his sister. He will ask for you. He may not want me there." Celeste's expression turned tired. "My brother was bleeding on concrete, and the first thing he asked was whether security had reached your apartment." Nora entered the room. Adrian looked smaller beneath the white sheets. The left side of his chest and shoulder were wrapped in thick bandages. An oxygen tube rested beneath his nose. His skin had lost its usual warmth. She stood beside the bed, uncertain where she could touch him without causing pain. His eyes opened. It took him a moment to focus. Then he saw her. Nora. Her name came out rough and broken. "I am here. You are safe." It was not a question. "Yes." His eyes closed briefly. "Good." Nora sat beside him. You got shot and you are checking on me. I am difficult to kill. That is not funny. I was not joking. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to demand answers while he was too weak to hide behind silence. Instead, she took his uninjured hand. His fingers closed around hers. I am sorry, he whispered, for getting shot, for all of it. Nora looked at their joined hands. Who did this? I do not know. Cole thinks it may be Sokolov. Cole thinks everyone may be Sokolov. Did you meet him? No. Did he ask you to? Adrian? Did not answer. Nora lifted her eyes. That means yes. He turned his face toward the window. Sokolov sent a request through an intermediary. What did he want? To discuss old business. And you refused? Yes. Then someone shot you? Yes. The answers were simple. The truth behind them was not. Nora released his hand. Do not give me another edited confession. Adrian looked back at her. I am not sure this is the right time. You were nearly killed. It is the only time. Nora, no more protection through ignorance. No more decisions made for me because you think fear gives you authority. Pain moved across his face, though she could not tell whether it came from the wound. What do you want to know? Everything. He closed his eyes. The machines continued their soft, mechanical rhythm. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. It carried none of the control he used in boardrooms. My father was not simply associated with organized crime. Nora waited. He ran part of it. Adrian told her about a childhood built around silence. Men arrived after midnight and entered through the butcher's shop below the apartment. His father kept 2 ledgers, one for taxes and one for truth. Adrian learned numbers because numbers made him useful. At 16, he could read a company report better than most adults. At 18, he understood how cash moved through businesses that did not earn it. At 21, he created shell companies that made illegal money appear legitimate. You laundered money before you built Moretti Urban Group. Yes. The word was barely audible. How much millions? Nora stared at him. Adrian continued. He never carried a gun for his father. He never collected debts in an alley or ordered a man beaten. He built systems that allowed other men to do those things. He approved inflated invoices. He placed criminal money into property purchases. He used contractors who threatened tenants into leaving buildings Adrian wanted empty. I told myself I was not responsible for methods I did not request, he said. Did you know what they were doing? Yes. Then you were responsible. Yes. He did not defend himself. That made the truth heavier. Nora asked about Leon Sokolov. Adrian had met him at 25 when he wanted to build an empire outside his father's reach. Traditional banks rejected him because the Moretti name frightened them. Sokolov offered $40 million through private accounts and foreign companies. The money allowed Adrian to buy industrial properties across the Midwest. In return, Sokolov gained access to construction contracts, real estate transfers, and financial channels. He used your developments to clean money. Yes. Drug money. Some of it. What else? Adrian's jaw tightened. Weapons, extortion, gambling. Nora rose from the chair and walked toward the window. Chicago spread below them, bright and orderly beneath the morning sun. Somewhere in that city stood buildings Adrian purchased with fear. How did you leave slowly? He replaced contractors, closed accounts, sold properties connected to criminal partners, cooperated with regulators where he could do so without exposing the company completely. Nora turned. Without exposing yourself? Yes. So this was never only about becoming legitimate. No. What else was it about survival? Adrian looked at her with a weariness she had never seen. If I had confessed everything, then my father's organization would have killed me. Sokolov would have killed Celeste. The government would have seized the company before I could separate the legal assets from the criminal ones. You chose the company. I chose time. You chose control. His eyes lowered. Yes. Nora returned to the chair but did not take his hand. How many people did your projects displace? Thousands. How many were threatened? I do not know. How many lost businesses? I do not know. You keep saying that as if not counting makes it smaller. I stopped looking at names because names made it harder. The admission cut through her. Harbor Light. Daniel's bookstore. Maggie's shaking hands. Nora had believed Adrian learned compassion after meeting her. Now she understood that he had spent years avoiding the human faces behind his success. Common Ground was not your first attempt to make amends. No. What were the others? Affordable housing in Cleveland, a clinic in Detroit, legal funds for tenants in Milwaukee. Did you tell anyone why? No. Did the people you hurt know the money came from you? Sometimes. Did they forgive you? Adrian looked toward the ceiling. Some refused to speak to me. Good. He closed his eyes. Yes. The door opened. A nurse entered to check his medication. Nora moved aside. Adrian's face tightened when the nurse examined the bandage. Sweat formed along his hairline, but he made no sound. After the nurse left, he seemed exhausted. Nora stood. Rest. His hand moved weakly toward her. Are you leaving? I am going outside. For how long I do not know. Fear appeared in his face. Not fear of Sokolov. Fear that she had heard enough to walk away. Nora. I understand if this changes everything. It changes everything. He absorbed the words. She continued before he could hide behind acceptance. But I am not deciding while you are drugged and bleeding. A breath left him. Fair. I am also not promising anything. I know. Nora touched his fingers. You need to stop deciding the cost before anyone else sees the bill. She left the room. Cole waited in the hallway with a tablet. We recovered footage from the garage. Nora looked at the screen. A dark sedan appeared near the exit. The image was grainy, but a man leaned from the rear window before the first flash. Cole slowed the recording. Do you recognize him? The face was unclear. Nora watched the sequence again. The shooter moved quickly, but the hand holding the weapon remained visible for a moment. Something was wrong with it. Stop. Cole froze the image. Zoom in. The picture became distorted. Nora pointed. His index finger. Cole looked closer. The upper section of the finger was missing. One of the men at Common Ground had the same hand. You are certain? He picked up the photograph. I saw it. Cole called 2 agents into the room. They were not Moretti security. One introduced herself as Special Agent Dana Whitaker of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The other worked with the United States Attorney's Office. Nora looked at Cole. You contacted federal agents. Adrian did, Cole said. 3 months ago. She stared at him. Why, he believed Sokolov was preparing to force his way back into the company. The agent placed a recorder on the table. We need everything you remember about the cafe incident. Nora described the men, the silver coin, the exact language of the warning, and the missing finger. Then she remembered the panic button. I pressed the audio control before they reached the counter. Cole looked at her. What audio control? The security system records 30 seconds before an alarm. I did not complete the signal, but it may have kept the buffer. They retrieved the cafe server. The recording was faint, but usable. The lead intruder's voice filled the small security room. A broke waitress smiled at a mafia air, as if he were an ordinary man. Nora listened without reacting. The agent paused the audio. This connects the threat to Sokolov. It connects his name, Cole said, not the order. Agent Whitaker nodded. We need Adrian's cooperation. Nora looked toward the hospital room. He has been cooperating. Not fully. The agent's tone was careful. Mr. Moretti has provided limited information through counsel, enough to request protection, not enough to build a case. Nora understood. Adrian still believed he could manage the truth by controlling its size. That afternoon, a package arrived for him. No return address. Inside was a simple black phone. It rang the moment Cole placed it on the hospital table. Adrian looked at Nora Celeste and Agent Whitaker. Everyone out. Nora remained seated. Adrian's eyes met hers. Nora. No more private versions of public danger. Agent Whitaker activated a recording device. Adrian answered the phone. Sokolov. A man laughed softly on the other end. Adrian Moretti. I hear you remain difficult to kill. Adrian's face became cold. Your man failed. My man became impatient. The voice carried a smooth Eastern European accent. He believed fear might improve your memory. You sent men to Nora's cafe. I sent a message. You threatened her. I introduced myself. Adrian gripped the phone. If anyone approaches her again, I will end you. Sokolov laughed. There is the boy I remember. Nora watched Adrian's expression and saw how easily anger awakened the older version of him. Sokolov continued. We have unfinished business. Your waterfront project offers excellent opportunities. Clean money, respectable contracts, no violence required. You want access to my accounts. I want cooperation. No. You answered too quickly. The answer has been no for 6 years, and yet everything you own exists because I said yes when banks did not. Adrian's gaze hardened. I repaid every dollar. You repaid the loan, not the loyalty. I never gave you loyalty. You gave me access. Then you closed the door. Sokolov's voice became quieter. I can open it again. Adrian looked at Nora. Sokolov knew she was in the room. Nora felt it. Agree to one development, he said. One series of contracts. Your woman lives without security. Your sister sleeps safely. Your company survives. And if I refuse, then uncertainty continues. The line went dead. Adrian placed the phone on the table. No one spoke. Agent Whitaker broke the silence. We can use that. To arrest him for making an unpleasant phone call, Celeste asked. To support conspiracy and extortion charges. We still need financial evidence and a direct agreement. Adrian looked toward the window. No. Nora turned to him. What do you mean I will not use you as bait? No one said that. You were in the room. He made the threat personal. Agent Whitaker said, Mr. Moretti, we need records from the original financing structure. Offshore accounts, contractor payments, communications. Those records expose my company. They expose you. Adrian's eyes moved toward her. They expose people who trusted me. Criminals, Nora said. Employees, family members, business partners who did not know the origin of the money. Celeste crossed her arms. Some did. Adrian looked at his sister. You understand what this would do? Yes. To the company. Yes. To you. Celeste stepped closer to the bed. I spent 15 years helping you clean a house whose foundation was already rotten. I am tired of pretending new paint solved it. Adrian stared at her. The room held years of unspoken history. Agent Whitaker left her card. When you are ready to provide everything, call me. After she left, Adrian said nothing for a long time. Nora watched the city darken beyond the glass. Will you accept Sokolov's offer? No. What will you do? Handle him. The phrase frightened her. How Adrian looked at Cole. Cole's face remained blank. Nora understood before either man spoke. You are going to kill him. I did not say that. You did not need to. Adrian shifted in the bed and winced. Nora, men like Sokolov do not retire because a prosecutor files paperwork. Men like Sokolov keep existing because men like you believe murder is the only honest language. He came after you. Then let me decide what happens in my name. Adrian's voice rose. If he had killed you, there would be no decision left to make, and killing him brings me back. His anger broke against the question. Nora moved closer. You told yourself violence was something other people did while you moved numbers. Now you are preparing to become the hand holding the weapon. Adrian looked away. He will never stop. Then give the government enough to bury him, and bury myself. Yes. The word entered the room like a blade. Celeste closed her eyes. Nora did not soften it. You said you wanted to become a better man. I am trying. Trying is what you do before the cost arrives. Adrian's face went still. Nora continued. Common ground, the clinics, the housing projects, they matter. But if you protect the empire built through those crimes while calling yourself redeemed, then all you changed was the story people tell about you. Adrian looked at her with hurt and anger. What do you want from me? The truth. All of it. You do not understand what that will cost. Then stop deciding which cost everyone else is allowed to survive. 2 days later, Adrian left the hospital against medical advice. He returned to his penthouse with his arm in a sling and anger moving through every room. Nora found him in the study. A pistol lay open on the desk. Cole stood near the door. Celeste held a file containing Sokolov's location. Nora stopped. No. Adrian looked up. He is attending a private dinner outside the city. You can barely lift your arm. I do not need both. Listen to yourself. Adrian closed the pistol case. This ends tonight. Nora walked to the desk. How many men will die? However many stand between me and him. And after that, it is finished. No. Someone replaces him. Someone wants revenge. Someone learns that hurting me makes you kill. Adrian's control cracked. What would you have me do? Confess to crimes committed 15 years ago. To all of them. You think prison makes you safe? I think the truth removes the weapon he keeps holding over you. It destroys everything I built. Then build again without bodies beneath it. Adrian stood. Pain struck him, but he remained upright. You say that as if people will forgive me. They may not. As if the company will survive. It may not. As if you will still be here. Nora's throat tightened. I do not know. The answer hurt them both. Adrian stared at her. You are asking me to lose everything without promising that I keep you. Yes. Silence filled the study. Nora felt tears burn behind her eyes. I cannot be the reward for doing what is right. Adrian lowered his head. Cole quietly left the room. Celeste followed. Nora and Adrian stood alone beside the closed pistol case. For years he had solved fear with control. Now there was nothing left to control. Adrian opened a drawer and removed a small metal key. He placed it in Nora's palm. What is this, a private archive beneath the old Moretti office? What is inside ledgers? Contracts, names, accounts, recordings my father kept for protection. And your records, everything. Nora closed her fingers around the key. Adrian looked exhausted. If I do this, there is no returning to the life I had. Maybe that is the point. He called Agent Whitaker. The preparation took 3 weeks. Federal agents moved Adrian and Nora between secured locations. Celeste negotiated cooperation terms. Cole reviewed security plans with men he once distrusted. Adrian surrendered financial ledgers, foreign account records, names of corrupt inspectors, and evidence connecting Sokolov to construction companies across 3 states. He also admitted his own crimes. No careful language, no distance between himself and the decisions. The government offered a controlled meeting with Sokolov. Adrian would wear a recording device. He would appear to accept the waterfront agreement. Agents would arrest Sokolov after he confirmed the criminal arrangement. Nora was placed inside a surveillance vehicle 2 blocks away. Adrian objected. She refused to leave. "I am already a witness. You are also a target. I can be both." The meeting took place inside a closed Italian restaurant near the river. Sokolov sat at a table beneath dark chandeliers. He was older than Nora expected, with silver hair and the relaxed posture of a man who assumed every exit belonged to him. Adrian entered alone. The microphone hidden beneath his shirt carried every sound into the surveillance vehicle. Sokolov poured wine. "You look pale." "I was shot. A misunderstanding. You call everything a misunderstanding after someone bleeds." Sokolov smiled. "You used to understand necessity. I understand it better now." A contract lay between them. Sokolov wanted 3 companies added to the development. Each would receive inflated construction payments. The excess money would move through foreign accounts and return as legitimate investment revenue. Adrian read the pages slowly. "You built your clean world with dirty money," Sokolov said. "Do not pretend the marble changed what lies beneath it." Adrian looked at him. It did not. Inside the surveillance van, Nora stopped breathing. Adrian placed the contract on the table. "That is why I am tearing out the foundation." Sokolov's smile vanished. One of his men stepped toward Adrian. Another looked toward the front windows. "He is wearing something," the man said. The room exploded into movement. A chair fell. Glass shattered. Sokolov reached beneath the table. Adrian pulled the pistol Cole had insisted he carry. For 1 second he had a clear shot. Sokolov stood directly before him. Nora watched the screen frozen. Adrian raised the weapon. Sokolov smiled through clenched teeth. "There you are." Adrian's finger tightened. Then he lowered the gun. "No." Federal agents entered from the kitchen and front doors. Sokolov's men reached for weapons. Agents shouted commands. Adrian stepped away from the table and placed his pistol on the floor. Sokolov stared at him while handcuffs closed around his wrists. "You think this makes you clean?" Adrian looked at the contract between them. "No." Agents searched Adrian too. One approached with handcuffs. Nora pushed open the surveillance van door before Cole could stop her. She reached the restaurant as Adrian was led outside. Rain had begun to fall. Sokolov was forced into one federal vehicle. Adrian stood beside another with his wounded arm held close to his body. Nora stopped several feet away. He looked at her. For the first time since she had known him, Adrian Moretti had no driver, no security team, and no company waiting to obey him. "I am sorry," he said. "Do not be sorry for finally telling the truth." An agent opened the vehicle door. Adrian did not move. "Will you wait for me?" Nora's eyes filled. She wanted to promise him everything. She wanted love to make certainty possible. It did not. Become the man worth waiting for. Adrian held her gaze. Then he entered the vehicle. The door closed between them. The federal vehicle disappeared into the rain, carrying Adrian away from the empire he had spent half his life building. Nora stood beneath the restaurant awning until the red lights vanished at the end of the street. Cole remained several feet behind her. He did not offer comfort. He understood that some grief became smaller only when no one touched it. The rain soaked the pavement and blurred the city into streaks of silver. Nora opened her hand. The key Adrian had given her was still pressed into her palm. It left a deep red mark in her skin. By sunrise, every news station in Chicago carried Adrian Moretti's name. The first reports described a federal operation against an international money laundering network. By noon, reporters had uncovered Adrian's cooperation. By evening, they had uncovered his crimes. Photographs from his youth appeared beside images of Sokolov being led from the restaurant in handcuffs. Headlines called Adrian a developer, a criminal financier, a government witness, and the heir to a mafia dynasty. No headline called him the man who had lowered the gun. Common Ground opened at 6 the next morning. Nora arrived before the staff. 3 news vans waited across the street. A reporter rushed toward her as Cole opened the car door. "Ms. Hayes, did you know Mr. Moretti's company was built with criminal money? Were you involved in the federal investigation? Is Common Ground funded by organized crime? Are you still in a relationship with Adrian Moretti?" Cole stepped between them. Nora entered the cafe without answering. Inside the room looked exactly as it had the day before. Chairs waited beneath tables. Daniel's books lined the shelves. Rose's pastries rested behind clean glass. A photograph of Harbor Light hung beside the register. The normality hurt. Kayla stood near the kitchen with tears in her eyes. "Are we closing? No. People are saying the government will seize everything. They may seize part of the company. Then how do we get paid?" Nora did not know. Helen arrived carrying 2 briefcases and a stack of documents. Celeste entered behind her, still wearing the clothes from the arrest. Neither woman had slept. Helen placed the documents on the counter. "Payroll clears Friday. After that, we have 4 weeks of operating cash." Kayla looked frightened. "What happens after 4 weeks?" Helen met Nora's eyes. "That depends on whether this place can survive without Adrian Moretti." The staff gathered before opening. Nora stood where she usually gave morning instructions about reservations and deliveries. No one looked at the coffee machines. They looked at her. "I will not lie to you," Nora said. "The investigation may change who owns this cafe. It may change our funding. It may change whether we can afford to remain open." A cook near the back asked, "Did Mr. Moretti do what they are saying?" "Yes." The direct answer moved through the room. Nora continued. "He also gave federal investigators evidence against Leon Sokolov and against himself. That does not erase what he did." Kayla wiped her cheek. "Are you leaving?" "No." The answer came before fear could interfere. "I am staying as long as we can keep the doors open. No one here is required to make the same decision. Anyone who wants to leave will receive every hour of pay we owe." No one moved. At 6, Nora unlocked the front door. The first customer entered, looked around, and asked whether the coffee was purchased with mafia money. Nora told him the price of a small cup. He left. By 9, only 6 tables were occupied. At noon, 2 windows were marked with red paint. "Criminal Cafe, blood money." Cole wanted to cover the glass immediately. Nora stopped him. "Leave it until closing." "Why?" "Because pretending it is not there will not make people trust us." That evening, she cleaned the words herself. For the next week, Common Ground lost money every day. Online reviews filled with accusations. Suppliers demanded early payment. A national coffee company offered to buy the cafe at a fraction of its value and replace the name. Their representative sat across from Nora in the reading room. "You could protect the staff," he said. "No one loses a job. The Moretti name disappears. And the affordable menu. We would review pricing. The community room. We would evaluate whether it supports revenue. Daniel's bookstore." The representative smiled carefully. "We sell books at some locations." Nora closed the proposal. "You do not want Common Ground. You want the address. We want to remove the risk. This place was built to take a different kind of risk." She returned the folder. "No." That refusal left them with 17 days of cash. Helen called an emergency meeting with employees, neighborhood leaders, and local business owners. The cafe filled for the first time since the arrest. Not everyone came to support Nora. Some wanted answers. A woman whose family had been forced out of an Adrian-owned building stood near the center of the room. "My mother died believing she had lost her home because she was poor," she said. "Now you want us to save the business of the man who did it." Nora did not defend Adrian. "You should not have to save anything that harmed you." "Then why are you here?" Because 32 people work here now. Because Rosa's bakery supplies this kitchen. Because Daniel's bookstore operates inside this building. Because students study here without being asked to leave. The woman folded her arms. That does not make him innocent. No. Do you forgive him? Nora looked toward the photograph of Adrian on opening day. I do not know whether forgiveness is one decision. I think it may be many decisions made after the person who caused the harm stops asking to be comfortable. The room became quiet. Nora placed a set of documents on the table. Celeste had spent 3 days rewriting the company structure. Common Ground would be removed from direct Moretti control. Employees would receive ownership shares. A community board would approve major changes. A portion of all future profit would support tenants and businesses displaced by Adrian's earlier developments. Nora looked at the faces around her. This place does not become honest because Adrian was innocent. He was not. It becomes honest if the people inside it refuse to continue the lie. Daniel Park stood first. He placed a check on the table. It was not a large amount. I would like to purchase 1 share. Rosa followed, then Maggie, who had flown back from Florida after seeing the news. By the end of the night, employees, customers, and neighborhood organizations had pledged enough money to cover 2 months of operation. It was not rescue. It was time. Adrian remained in federal custody while his attorneys negotiated with prosecutors. Nora saw him for the first time 6 weeks after the arrest. The visitation room was divided by thick glass. Adrian wore a dark green uniform instead of a suit. Without his watch-tailored clothes and silent staff, he looked younger, more tired too. He lifted the phone. Nora did the same. "You cut your hair," he said. She touched the shorter strands near her chin. It was getting in the food. He smiled faintly. "How is the cafe still open?" "I heard about the employee ownership plan. Celeste helped. You created it. You created the emergency." The smile disappeared. "Yes." Nora studied him through the glass. There were shadows beneath his eyes. "Are you safe?" "I am protected." That was not my question. Adrian looked toward a guard. "I am learning that safety and control are not the same thing." Nora almost laughed. "You needed federal custody to discover that?" "Apparently." He asked about the staff. He asked whether Rosa had kept the contract. He asked if Daniel still complained about people folding pages. Nora answered each question. Then Adrian began offering solutions. He knew a bank that could extend credit. Helen could contact an investor in Boston. Celeste could move funds from one legal account to another. Nora let him speak until he finished. "I already handled it. How we reduced the menu, negotiated new supplier terms, delayed the second location. Employees agreed to temporary profit-based compensation. You should not delay the second location. The lease terms are favorable. You do not get to manage me from behind glass." Adrian went silent. Nora waited. Old Adrian would have argued. He would have explained why his experience justified the interference. Instead, he nodded. "You are right." The words sounded less effortless now. That mattered. At the next visit, Adrian told her about letters he had received. Some came from employees who thanked him for confessing. Others came from families displaced by his developments. One letter contained only 4 sentences. "You knew what they were doing. You let them do it. My father lost his store. Do not ask us to forgive you." Adrian placed the letter against the glass. "What should I write back?" "Nothing. I should apologize. They did not ask for an apology. Then what do I do?" "You accept that they may never give you what you want." "What do I want?" "To believe your suffering balances theirs." Adrian looked down. After a long silence, he said, "It does not." "No." He folded the letter carefully. Their visits were not always gentle. Some weeks, Nora did not go. She had work classes and crises that could not wait for prison schedules. Adrian never complained. Nora enrolled in evening courses at a city college. She studied finance, labor law, and community development after closing the cafe. At first, she did it because every meeting reminded her how much she did not know. Later, she did it because knowledge no longer felt like a world reserved for other people. Common Ground slowly recovered. Maggie returned to Chicago and agreed to manage the morning shift 3 days a week. She complained that the espresso machine had too many buttons and that everyone under 30 moved too slowly. Customers returned in cautious numbers. Some came because they supported Nora. Some came because they wanted to stare at the place mentioned in the news. Some came because the coffee was good, and life eventually made room for routine again. Nora opened a second Common Ground location inside a struggling community center on the west side. It had no marble counter, no brass fixtures, and no investor reception. The reading room occupied more space than the dining area. Local artists painted the walls. Teenagers helped design the menu. The opening made no national news. Nora preferred it that way. Adrian's sentencing took place 11 months after his arrest. The federal courtroom was full. Prosecutors described the value of the evidence he provided. His records led to arrests in Chicago, Cleveland, New York, and Detroit. Corrupt contractors lost licenses. Hidden accounts were seized. Leon Sokolov faced charges that could keep him imprisoned for the rest of his life. Then prosecutors described Adrian's own crimes: the money laundering, the shell companies, the illegal contracts, the tenants displaced through intimidation, the years he chose silence because confession threatened his wealth. Adrian stood before the judge wearing a plain dark suit. His injured shoulder had healed, though he still moved carefully. When the judge asked whether he wished to speak, Adrian unfolded a single page. "I spent years saying I did not order the threats, remove the tenants, or carry the money." His voice remained steady. "That language allowed me to live comfortably beside what I knew. I built systems that made violence profitable while keeping it out of my sight." Nora sat behind Celeste. Adrian did not look toward them. "I cannot return what people lost. I cannot ask my later choices to erase my earlier ones. I can only tell the truth, surrender what was built through those crimes, and accept the judgment of this court." The judge sentenced him to 18 months in federal prison. His cooperation reduced what might have been a far longer sentence. He was ordered to pay a substantial fine and restitution. Several properties were seized. He was prohibited from holding executive control in Moretti Urban Group for 5 years. The company would survive. The empire would not. As officers approached him, Adrian finally turned. He found Nora in the gallery. There was no speech between them. Nora placed her palm against the glass barrier. Adrian mirrored the gesture. Then he was taken away. The months that followed were quieter. Nora wrote to him, but not every letter concerned love. She wrote about a broken freezer, Daniel's first children's book event, Kayla's promotion, and the health inspection. Maggie nearly failed because she stored pie in the wrong refrigerator. Adrian wrote about prison workbooks he had avoided reading when he was free, and the strange humiliation of asking permission to make a phone call. He stopped offering solutions unless Nora asked. That may have been the clearest evidence that he was changing. Near the end of his sentence, Adrian wrote one sentence that Nora read several times. "I used to believe love meant standing between you and every danger. Now I think it may mean trusting you to stand without me." Nora folded the letter and placed it inside the drawer beneath her register. 18 months after the night of the arrest, Nora drove south before sunrise. Maggie sat beside her in an old pickup truck borrowed from her sister. "You could have rented something nicer," Maggie said. "This has character. It has no heat. Character is cold." They waited outside the federal facility as pale morning light spread across the parking lot. The gate opened at 8. Adrian walked out carrying one small bag. He wore a dark coat that did not fit as perfectly as his old clothes. His hair was longer. His face looked leaner. He stopped when he saw Nora. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Adrian walked toward her. "You came. I said become worth waiting for." A cautious smile appeared. Did Nora studied him? The man before her was not cleansed by prison. He was not suddenly free of pride, anger, or the instincts shaped by his father, but he had stopped hiding from the cost of them. "You are getting closer." Adrian laughed. Maggie leaned across the driver's seat and shouted through the open window. "Are you two going to stare at each other all morning?" "Some of us need coffee." Nora opened the passenger door. Adrian climbed inside. He reached for her hand, then stopped. Nora noticed. She turned her palm upward. His fingers settled around hers. They drove back to Chicago beneath a clear winter sky. Nora did not take him to the penthouse. It had been sold as part of the restitution settlement. She did not take him to Moretti Urban Group. Helen now served as chief executive, and Adrian had no office there. She took him to Common Ground. The cafe was crowded. Students filled the long table. Nurses occupied the window booths. Daniel argued with a customer about the proper way to hold a paperback. Rosa's pastries disappeared almost as quickly as employees placed them in the case. Adrian stood inside the entrance, taking in every change. A plaque near the door read, "This space belongs in part to the people who work here." He touched the engraved words. "Employee ownership 40%, and the community board permanent voting rights. You changed everything. I kept what worked, and removed what did not, ruthlessly." His smile widened. Kayla saw him and stopped moving. Then she crossed the cafe and hugged him. Others followed more cautiously. Some shook his hand, some nodded. A few did not approach at all. Adrian accepted each response. Maggie brought him a cup of coffee. "Welcome back." He took a sip and made a face. "This is terrible. It is my original Harbor Light blend. That explains it." Maggie walked away muttering about ungrateful criminals. After closing, Nora and Adrian sat in the corner booth. The cafe lights were low. Snow moved softly beyond the windows. Adrian turned the cup between his hands. "I do not know what my life looks like now. You are free. That is not the same as having direction. No. My money is reduced. My reputation is damaged. I cannot return to the company. No." He looked at her. "You seem to enjoy saying that. I spent years hearing you say yes for everyone." Adrian leaned back. "What do you want?" The question was different now. He was not asking what he could buy, fix, or arrange. He was asking because he did not know. Nora reached across the table. "I want you to learn how to live without being the most powerful person in every room. That sounds unpleasant. It will be good for you. And us." Nora looked around the cafe they had built, lost, and rebuilt in a different form. "Us does not begin where it stopped." Adrian's eyes lowered. "I understand. It begins here." He looked up. Nora smiled. Not the accidental smile from Harbor Light. Not the frightened smile of a woman grateful to be chosen. This smile carried knowledge. She knew what he had done. She knew what loving him had cost. She also knew what she had become without his protection. Adrian stared at her with the same stunned expression he had worn the first morning she poured his coffee. "That smile ruined my life," he said. Nora tightened her fingers around his. "No." She leaned closer. "It stopped you from ruining it yourself." Behind them, Daniel switched off the reading room lights. Maggie counted the register. Kayla carried cups toward the kitchen. Adrian stood and reached for one side of a heavy tray. Nora took the other. Together they carried it across the cafe. Outside, Chicago moved beneath the falling snow. Inside, no one bowed when Adrian entered the room. No one needed to. He was no longer standing above them. He was finally standing among them.